Special focus at this hour, a huge concern in the world of artificial intelligence. Now in the UK, a case of rape in the Metaverse has been reported. Now this is the first case of rape in a virtual reality game. What exactly happened? Well, a 16-year-old was gang raped virtually while she was playing this particular game, this AI game. It's unclear whether she was actually playing, but she was certainly wearing the headset, is what the police are saying. Now, the minor girl's digital avatar was sexually attacked by strangers, and the strangers gang raped the teenage girl in the immersive game. Now, there's no physical injury given the nature of the offence, but the same level of trauma as a real world rape. This is what the police are saying. In fact, the police have gone on to say that the girl is suffering grave psychological trauma, and she is under medical consideration as well. Now, the police have begun their investigation into the virtual rape case. Now, whether there should be an investigation or not, there's a divided house on that, because there's a certain section that says that the probe is not justified given the fact that the police in the UK are already battling a huge backlog of real world rape cases. But the Home Department, importantly, has backed the probe, saying that the sexual trauma of the survivor is real, even in this particular case. In fact, the UK Home Secretary has said that virtual offenders have the capability of turning real world offenders as well and perpetrating real life crimes. Now, there's a current legislation that is there in place, but that is not set up for sexual offences in the virtual world. Those legislations are confined to offences in the real world. Now, is Meta prepared or not? That is the other big question. Well, there is an automatic protection of personal boundary option, but is that enough? That is a big question that we are asking. Joining me on the broadcast now, I'm being joined by Amit Dubey, a cyber expert. I will also be joined by Pawan Duggal, a cyber law expert and an advocate with the Supreme Court. Mr. Dubey, thanks very much for joining us. This is an absolutely shocking case, a first in many ways, but larger questions will be raised. Are we prepared? Is the virtual world ready to deal with offences of this nature? But before we get to that, talk to us about what a rape in the virtual reality world is, because many people will not understand the gravity of it. While there is no physical injury given the nature of the game, the fact is that the sexual trauma or the emotional trauma is very real, given the fact that these games are very immersive.
See, first of all, we need to understand the effect of metaverse in our life, because many of us have not experienced the real metaverse.
Yes.
And have not used the VR goggles to that extent. Goggles like Oculus and all, they give you a very realistic experience in those virtual environments. You get so close to people, you get their modulation and all, you get so affected personally, even though if you're not there physically, but the kind of experience you have, it is as real. You can see the surroundings; those are very real and very accurate, high, you will say, detailing of all these nature or buildings or cars or malls. So that is something which you get involved in. Now, we have already seen some cases of cyberbullying. Most of these chat rooms, those are available in Oculus or in VR goggles or Metaverse, different kind of Metaverse. They offer you chat rooms where you can, and kids are crazy about it. Many teenage kids, they get into it and they interact with the people around the world. They don't know whether they are actually same age of group of people or different age or even criminals, but they get involved in their discussions. They share their experiences. They take a tour along. They play games together. Because of that engagement, there is a finite probability that they will also be abused. And we have seen such cases where these kids were cyberbullied. These kids were harassed or even exploited to a great extent. Yes. They were forced to do something which they didn't want to do.
That's right. Now, and that's an important point you're making, Mr. Dubey, there, that you are forced to be privy to a lot of things that you've not signed up for. Given the fact that it's such an immersive game, I mean, you're so involved in it psychologically, emotionally, even physically to an extent, it feels like it's actually happening to you. So, the trauma, of course, is something that will be very real.
Of course, and it impacts you psychologically to a great extent. These kids, they do not talk to their parents. They don't share these kind of things. When these bullied guys, they ask them to tear off their clothes or to speak in a different language or to abuse somebody They give them tasks to do something. Initially, it looks some real fun, but eventually it becomes quite abusive,
Yes.
and that is something which impacts them personally. So
And
we
these
have already
offences have
seen
been
such
on the
cases.
rise, while this is what you could call the first virtual rape, and that's extremely unfortunate, but these incidents of sexual offences have been on the rise. What do we do? How does the police actually go about probing these cases? Because it's an extremely complex case that has its own sensitivities and complexities involved. How does the police actually go about investigating this?
See, first of all, there are multiple metaverse environment. We need to understand where it has happened, who was managing it, whether there were regulations prevailed or framework allow us to reach out to those people those are into that metaverse. Because not every metaverse is following international norms. There is no such regulations available right now. Even AI regulations are missing in many
Yes.
countries. So that's the reason criminals take the advantage of it. They become anonymous. They are joining these metaverse through avatars, and they can even clone the avatars. They may be using somebody else's stolen identities also to appear there and to do some
Right.
crime.
And very
And
quickly,
then
Mr. Dubey, before I let you go, you made an important point there that these are nameless, faceless entities. So very difficult to hold people accountable also. But we need legislations. There are advocacy groups talking about human rights and thinking about human rights in the virtual world as well. What is the way forward, very quickly?
I think we need to start discussing seriously about it to bring some law for
Yes.
metaverse, and we need to put these platforms under that law. We need to also put some regulations for users; those are using metaverse. There are all the records, KYC should be done. Who are these guys? What are they doing in this metaverse? Everything should be logged in properly so that later on, if something happens, we should reach out to those people. Right now, it is just used for entertainment purpose, but eventually it will be used for shopping. There'll be shopping fraud. Eventually, it will be used for
Important
much more
point
serious
there.
engagements.
I'm being
There'll
told
be corporate
I'm
frauds.
joined by Pawan Duggal as well. Very quickly, Mr. Duggal, I'm wrapping the discussion up, but just talking about legislation in this sphere as well, as I was discussing with Mr. Dubey, we need some laws that hold people accountable, and we need to start discussing human rights in the virtual world as well.
Could you repeat your question? Is it for me, please?
Quick comment from you, Mr. Duggal, on legislations in the virtual world and talking about human rights, when it comes to AI and VR.
Well, there is no denying the fact that humans have rights not only in the physical world, but also in the cyber world at once. But therefore, once these newly emerging technologies are coming in, like artificial intelligence, like metaverse, clearly we require new legislation and law so that the rights of humans in this newly changing technological paradigms can be appropriately protected. Recently, I did a case where one of our clients had a female avatar on the metaverse, and that female avatar on the metaverse got digitally raped by a male avatar of another client on the metaverse. Now, the clients wanted to take action for digital rape, but we couldn't do so because there was no law. But ultimately, when your female avatar gets digitally raped on the metaverse, it's a direct affront to your rights as a human because it's your avatar. So similarly, in the context of AI and metaverse, we find that the existing legal frameworks are not at all adequate to go ahead and deal with these challenges of protecting human rights and human interests. We have to realize that we will have to have in place quick, dedicated legal frameworks because the existing law, the Information Technology Act 2000 and rules and regulations don't really talk about this newly changing technical paradigm, and nor do they talk about any aspects for protecting and preserving the rights of humans in this new technological paradigm.
So that's an important point, Mr. Duggal, that we need to be more equipped when it comes to, dealing with such cases, because this is unfortunately the reality that we are now living in a virtual world. So we need to be thinking about these aspects as well. Thanks very much, gentlemen, for joining us on this very important discussion.